welcome everyone to the 64th meeting, apparently, of FMBug. We've got some great stuff going on today, I hope, and no doubt loads of discussions after Doug's talk, which is coming up after Gary's brief roundup of what's new. And the only other thing that we've got formally on the agenda today, because I think there's going to be so much talk, is Gary's going to give a little bit of a talk about local bot automation. So the usual rules, keep quiet unless you've got something to say. If you need to interject, if the speaker's happy if you interject, then do so. You can also stick your hand up, I think, now in Zoom. I'm sure everyone's familiar with all the Zoom features. Great to see you all, and let's kick off, Gary.
Okie doke. Right, let's go with this and share my screen, which should be this one, I hope. If I'm sharing the right one, can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I'll leave you to admit people, Jul, because I'm trying to talk, so it's going to be fun without ringing in my ears, but that's fine. Right, the news. The first thing I'm going to say is obviously there was a Claris announcement, but I'm not going to steal the thunder of why Doug's here, but I'm sure that'll be covered. So I'm not going to talk about anything to do with that. There was a Claris announcement not that long ago. So I'll focus on the other things I found. And I say I found it. I have to always give praise to Penny. She's my eyes and ears in the industry. She's constantly looking at stuff. First thing I read was Soliant did like a little annual update, which I thought was a really good post, and it shows like key projects and things they were working on throughout the year, which is really good. Jill, I will keep notes of the links and put them in the chat for everybody after. So yeah, it was good. There's about 3 or 4 little articles they did about what they'd covered, something about like Zulu time, how you then put that into your solutions. And the Salesforce was a project update thing they were working on as well. But it's a good read, a few links there. Always interesting to find out what Soliant are doing, because they're usually doing something a bit cutting edge in what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I thought that was a really good article to read. Second one is Proof+Geist basically went over the presentation that you're probably going to hear Doug talk about, but I thought it was quite nice. There's a full feature here, an article about their take on what Claris have announced and how they can see pros, cons, benefits, pitfalls, all that sort of stuff. So again, it gives another take on what you're about to probably hear Doug talk about. I've read up about from various people, and it's interesting what's in the community at the moment of whose opinions of how it's going to fit within their business, how it's going to fit within what they're doing development-wise. So there's a lot of buzz about it at the moment. There's a lot of talk about it for the good, which is great. And this is something I saw on FMSoup that got posted, which is basically Claris's announcements to the 3 tools becoming free, basically. So you'll be able to just download them and use them. And I thought that was quite good. So it's a developer tool for everybody. If you use these tools already, great. If you don't, then I'd recommend you have a read about the 3 tools, because it's worthwhile finding out whether or not any of them are fit for your business and what you do. So it's worth considering. So and that, I have to say, is my whistle stop tour to the news, because there's no point talking about much else, because the Claris announcement is going to take over most of it, I'm sure. All of this stuff, if you're new to what we do here, we have our presentations, we have Q&As at the end of our presentations, and then at the end of that, I stop the recording and we have a completely open forum of chat. And we call it the virtual bar because most people go off and get a drink. So any of the news stories I'm happy to pick up on, and my opinion of what's being said today will be discussed at the end of the event in the virtual bar. So
cool, it works finally. So good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are on the planet. My name is Doug Wallis. I'm a project manager at Claris. For those who don't know what product management do, no one does anyway, so it's fine. Essentially what we do is we look after the business ideas in conjunction with the product team or the product engineering team to figure out that the stuff that we are doing is actually useful for our customer base and that we are moving in the right direction for the future. Over the last year or so, we've been participating in more user groups through something that we create internally called Claris Corner. So essentially, it's either me, Giuliano, who's our director of product management in the US, sometimes Andrew Lecates or Robert, where we asked to be invited by a user group, talk about Claris, some of the new stuff that we're doing, and then trying to actually sort of get back to getting more information, feedback from the community, because without the feedback from community, what we do is actually kind of pointless and actually doesn't move us where we want to go. And so as Brad's been saying for pretty much since the first Claris Engage, the virtual version is FileMaker out of the box doesn't do anything, and FileMaker on itself doesn't do anything. So the only way basically you get anything that's of value through a Claris product is from the community. And so one of the things that we're really trying to actually sort of get out is the success of Claris is only there because there's success coming from developers, and without developers and community, there basically is no FileMaker, there's no Claris. And so throughout this sort of the pandemic and for about sort of like last year, we've been trying to figure out what can we do on our end to make it easier for our developers to actually keep on doing the great work that they're doing and to move them forward with the new stuff. And so essentially what we sort of looking at the acceleration process within Claris is kind of making the platform better than it is now. So fixing as many of the bugs that we have, moving FileMaker through some of the stuff that we are working on, and I'll show you later, into a world where we are moving from what we've done for the last 30 years to how we could do the same stuff, but better, more secure with newer sort of new tools for the next 30 years. And that work of improving the platform works for the community, so that community can actually grow, and by growing will provide end user better apps. And so through a better community, we have eventually more awareness, we have more people being aware of what Claris can do, and we grow everything. So we have more people starting up using Claris at an early age. And so basically the idea is to grow everything. So community, platform, and awareness go all the way together to making Claris a better platform all the way around. And so essentially is what we're doing currently is we have been working kind of hard on the latest, the future release of FileMaker 19, which is going to be 19.5, which is going to come out very soon. It's pretty much GM'd across the board. And so we'll actually get it out quite soon to the open market. Essentially what we've been working on this release of FileMaker 19.5 is on the server side. We know that there's a lot of bugs issue that we have. There's a lot of stuff that was actually missing out. And we are trying to actually slowly move away from the idea that FileMaker is purely basically a server that sends information to the client and the client does all the work. We're trying to sort of leverage more basically on the idea of where the future of the market is, and the market nowadays is servers need more powers, more work is being done on the server side, less than on the client side. And so we're trying to move away from this vision of what FileMaker used to be 20 years ago, where it was really sort of the server was doing more work, when now we want to push a bit more work being done on the server side. So the team basically working on the FileMaker sort of development has been working eventually quite hard on improving the performance of the whole server side of it. We will be supporting Ubuntu 20 in the next release. Our focus is not to drop any of the platforms, but the focus that we're going to basically be pushing is to try to help as much as we can customers move to a Linux environment. There's more stuff that we can do with Ubuntu. We use it for the cloud. Some of the new stuff I'll talk about on the future of FileMaker is really more sort of Linux based. And so we're really sort of trying to actually help customers move towards Linux as quickly as they can. Obviously, the Mac version is going to stay there. The Windows Server version is going to stay there. But with the way that market is growing a bit everywhere, we're going to try to help as much as we can people to move away from that. Like everything, we've done sort of all the updates from iOS that's on the market. We'll be using inside of the latest version. On the server side as well, we're doing what we call parallel backups. And so we've been investing quite a bit of work on making the admin API work better in terms of backups, so that you potentially can do more regular backups, there's less potential failures on backups. The power backups, essentially what it's doing, it's learning by itself the type of file that are being used together. And so it's only doing backups when file are being used together in sort of a separate environment, so that you have recurring backups being done properly, and you're less prone to actually have issues with your backups along the way. The server-side summarization is similar to what we've done in a previous version, where we were doing server-side sorting. Is like I was saying before, is we want the server to be able to actually do more work. And so if your solution has a lot of summaries that it has to do, the idea is to be able to do most of them on the server if there's enough bandwidth, if there's not too many users, and only send the results back to the client, because a lot of the stuff that's doing in summarization, like a lot of calculation, is the server sends all the data to the client all the stuff, and then shows that, which is basically sending way too much information on the connection. So the idea is to just send the results to the client, so the whole process works a lot better than before. OData that we've originally had only on Linux is now going to be used on Windows Server and Mac OS. That's quite useful for anyone who wants to do API using the OData, because it's kind of, in some instances, better than the data API. And for new users who are not sort of so much into the FileMaker world, the grasp of how to actually communicate between a FileMaker server and the application is done in an easy way. Like we do quite a lot of work with the Apple Academy in Naples. We just take new students. So the first years, they pretty much learn everything that's to do about Swift, any sort of kit that actually work inside of iOS. And for the second year students, they run projects for ONGs around the planet. There's about 8 groups. Out of the 8 groups, 5 use FileMaker as the backend database. Originally, they were doing everything in FileMaker, and because they were like sort of Swift developers, they moved away from doing the layouts in FileMaker. And so what they're using now is they're creating the database sort of tables inside of FileMaker, and then they use OData to communicate with the iOS app SDK, the iOS apps. And they created their own sort of OData engine inside the apps to be able to actually talk to that. So there's quite a lot of stuff being done there, which is quite good for us. The other thing we've done, and I'll show you on the next slide, is we've been exposing the WebD OAuth API. So the idea is to be able to pretty much create your own FileMaker WebDirect entry page the way you want it to do, and you will be able to actually communicate in an easy way with the OAuth provider, so that you don't actually have to use the FileMaker WebDirect homepage. You'll be able to actually create your own page from that angle, which is going to be a lot nicer. We've done a huge amount of improvement on WebDirect. And the way we're essentially doing that is we are working now with SVA partners. So Claris partners that set a vertical solution to a lot of customers around the planet. And the idea is we work closely with them to figure out all the issues that they're having, so that whenever we can actually fix a lot of these issues, we work with an end product that's been tested for us on the field by users. And so we know a lot more what's going on and be able to actually improve that. So we've been doing a lot of work on the caching engine, and we've been working to actually fix a lot of the issues that we have on site. 7XML support is now working on the server as well. So if you want to create all the stuff around it, that's quite useful. And on top of that, we have like a lot of customer issues being fixed. As I mentioned, the idea is to get a lot more information, feedback from partners or large SBA customers, or any type of customers on big issues that they have, so that we can actually fix them by giving you sort of early copies of FileMaker, so you can test them out and actually tell us whether everything is actually working. So on this version of 19.5, in the last 3.5 months we've been working on it, we've been able to actually fix about 400 bugs. Question that everyone asks is, are you going to give a list of bugs, fixes? We are kind of trying to figure out a way of doing it. So for the time being, it's kind of no, but we're trying to figure out a way of being able to actually do it in the future. The biggest issue is basically with a bug is, first of all, we have to describe what it's doing, and then we have to actually sort of tell you how it's fixed and what it's going to do afterwards. But not everyone has the same impression of what a bug is and how it works and how it's being resolved. And so we're trying to find how to do it. To be able to actually do that, you need technical writers who actually know the product and can write so that it's fully understandable by everyone. And on top of that, that content has to be localized. So the effort of actually putting a list of bug fixes just on out there could be done. But the problem is we have to explain what it was doing before, what the fix did, so that you are aware of where you need to change, like either your scripts or your layout, because the bugs actually is going to basically break something in your solution. And then we have to actually be able to explain that to every type of developers. So from the top level all the way down to someone who's been maybe doing FileMaker for just a couple of years and might not be completely aware of what we mean all the way across. So there's some stuff that we're working on for the future, and we'll see whether we can do it. So the future basically, so 19.5 is going to come quite soon. There's 19.6 that's already on the way internally where we're working. What we are working on is to be able to actually do script transaction. Essentially, script transaction will give you within the script the option to be able to regroup data or queries or data transfers together in a script without having to actually have this sort of back and forth remote calls between the server and the client. So it's early days, we're kind of working on it. We have a couple of partners we're working with to see what we can do with it and how it's going to basically work in the future. Again, for people that actually know exactly how transaction works in other systems, we can actually get it to work quite well for them. The problem is we have to do it for the whole community. And so we want to make sure that every type or at every level of a FileMaker developer, that notion of transaction is going to be understood and will be easier for people to be around with. We'll be supporting the signing with Apple as well. We're going to do better user group management for OAuth inside FileMaker server. And the last thing we're working on is to be able to actually increase the scalability of the server to have more web direct connections. So we know that there's a lot of demand for web direct sort of big usage out there. Currently, the limit is on one database server plus multiple web application engine, you can go to 500. We want to get that to 1,000 and then potentially go a bit further than that. And like I was saying before is the idea is basically community is really important. And so the idea for us is we want to give you like a couple of small tools that we can build internally so that your life as a developer becomes a lot easier. So one of the things that we're working on is bypassing pretty much basically the FileMaker web direct homepage so that you can create your own in an easier way than before and be able to actually use your OAuth providers on the side so that it's seamless, basically the integration of your FileMaker solution with the authentication system that's been in the background. On top of that is, as Gary was saying, is the tools that used to be part of the FileMaker developer subscription. So you had to pay for that, it was hard to find. We're actually giving that away now to everyone in the community. There's no point in us creating supporting tools for your development project if we don't give you the tools. So the idea says, let's give it to everyone, get people to actually start playing with it, and actually giving feedback on what can be done better so that we can actually fix some of the bugs inside it. Like we had on the Deco migration tools, we had some issues with the way that local settings were being used, but because we actually didn't have enough feedbacks, we weren't aware of really those bugs. By giving to more people, we're going to get basically more feedback, potentially more bugs, but at least we'll be able to know what we need to fix. And so we'll be able to actually provide you better software along the way. So in the timeline of where Claris is going, so on the graph that Peter and Brad were talking about when they actually did the keynote a couple of weeks back, they're kind of sort of giving this vision of where Claris FileMaker was when it was created, the integration of Claris Connect on top of that when it came out, and where the whole platform pretty much is going to go. So that we know that basically with FileMaker, with the current tool that we have, some of it's inside it, it's kind of outdated, and we want to actually move away from some of how it works and what is done with it. We were trying to actually sort of incorporate Claris Connect inside the FileMaker, but it took a lot of time. We worked on another project for Apple internally with Connect, so everything was actually quite moved away. But the idea is we want to basically get to a point where the Claris platform is the complete unity of all the products that we are actually doing. And so one of the problems that we know that we have currently is we have people that actually see themselves as FileMaker, the product itself, developers, and they're not going to be using Connect, or they're not going to be using other products that will provide or create in the future. And the idea is we want people to actually see themselves more like a Claris developer, and they'll be using the whole platform to be able to actually get to where they're actually going to. On the back end of what we're doing inside of Claris, we've talked about Claris Engage before. Some of the stuff that we know, which is kind of being a bit of a problem, is the way that FileMaker was born a long time ago, and FileMaker was born pretty much inside an office. And so in terms of the usage, the way you could do with FileMaker, it worked really nicely inside an office. But as soon as you were putting basically on the internet, it was creating a lot of issues. We've seen it when, especially for us internally, when we launch FileMaker Cloud, which is using AWS as the hosting platform. Even though AWS is very good, we were noticing that a lot of our customers moving to FileMaker Cloud weren't really happy with the systems because they had built Office-based apps that they were moving to the cloud and wasn't really working properly. So the idea with the new stuff that we're working on, part of Claris, is to be able to actually get people to build web-based, or I should say, so yeah, cloud-based or data-based, data center-based application, which will basically mean that using it on an iPhone across a 4G line is going to be better. Working from home with a pandemic that's still going on will be a lot easier, and make it sort of more scalable for the type of usage that's going to be the future. So the idea that it's born on the one, you're creating the app, and whether you're using the on-premise version or whether you're using our cloud version, the idea is you're building something across the internet. We want to be multi-tenant. So for a long time, whether you're SBA provider or if you want to do sort of small hosting, FileMaker is a single tenant environment. The idea is to move away from that to be able to actually sort of give the option to people to do a multi-tenancy. Like we were basically saying, is it needs to be more open. So we want more developers from other environment to actually come in and use their knowledge with the type of app that you can build on Claris. It has to be more modern. It has to be faster than it is now. Again, we're keeping this idea that it's to be able to run on the cloud and on premise. That's one of the core advantage of FileMaker, the product, and the Claris as a company, is it's been working brilliantly on premise, and any of our competitors that move to a cloud-only based environment have to come back now to be able to offer on-premise, because organization want to be able to actually build their own, let's say, private cloud. They won't basically get the binaries of the apps they're going to use and build their own environment the way they wanted to do. And in order to be quicker and faster, we need to be able to move to a new sort of engine for the database. And that's why we're moving to NoSQL. Like, essentially is, for the development, it's not going to change anything. You're still going to have tables, you're still going to have fields, you're still going to have script and stuff like that. You're not going to basically go into the NoSQL sort of engine and be able to actually sort of play around with it and actually figure out we are building that on top of this NoSQL sort of system. So you don't, if you want to learn more MongoDB, you can do some research on how it works and stuff like that, but there is no need for you to learn how that works to be able to actually use Claris in the future. Otherwise, there wouldn't actually be any point in building Claris. You can just basically start using MongoDB and do your own stuff on your own. So at first, basically, in order to actually get the common Claris product to work with this new stuff, we are extending ESS to be able to actually talk to this new NoSQL engine. So in FileMaker, you'll basically be able to see what we're calling a Claris Studio data source, the same as you are currently looking at a any type of table, ghost table that's coming out from ESS. So for the user inside of Claris, it's not going to change much. You'll be able to actually see the same stuff as before. You'll pretty much be able to actually do a lot of stuff. Now, we've released basically a preview version of some of the future. I'll go more into this after that. Essentially is we are working in a different way than before to be able to actually get to where we want to go. So instead of actually building something all the way to where we want it to be, and then releasing that and then waiting for feedback, we're doing like a preview where we're going to be able to actually sort of give you early versions to start playing with it. And eventually from the feedback, be able to build exactly what's needed from both the community and from the end customers. So the final version is going to take some time to actually get out there, but we're going to basically take our time to build something that actually does work for everyone on the community. Oops, going around. So the future of where we actually sort of taking Claris, and I'll look quickly because this is sort of early days, but the idea is we are kind of putting everything back into the terminology of Claris. So we're dropping eventually the word FileMaker. One of the reasons for that is, and I'm assuming you've all sort of seen that when you were talking to customer, whether it's internally, is the vision. And when you talk about FileMaker, people have this view that it's an old software that's been there for 40, 50 years that basically should have died, and they still don't understand what it's doing. It's still doing there. And it's creating problems for every type of developer, because whenever they talk about FileMaker, someone else has heard of it and is going to go, oh yeah, I saw FileMaker 20 years ago. It was yuck. I don't want to basically see that in my company. And so we have to move away from that. So even though we love the word FileMaker and we are all at heart FileMaker developers, we have to actually sort of move away from that name, because it's creating basically a massive wall for us to be able to actually move forward. And so we're moving basically to this idea that Claris will be the name that we use for the product. So it's going to be confusing at first for everyone, even internally. It's confusing when we have discussions between Claris Pro and FileMaker Pro, but this is where we want to take it. So FileMaker Pro will become Claris Pro, FileMaker Go will Claris Go, and then FileMaker Server will come in Claris Server. For now, it doesn't change. It's going to take months to actually sort of be implemented, but this is where we're going. And then we have sort of this new product, which is called Claris Studio. Claris Studio basically is, for the time being, kind of new stuff that we are, but it's basically our playground. This is where we're trying this new web interface to create web forms. This is where we're playing around with this sort of new database engine to see how we can do better multi-tenancy. This is how we can do really quick queries, how basically we can actually make FileMaker become something eventually even better in the future. So what we've done, and I'm just going to show on our website, we've actually come up with a program which we are calling the Claris Problem Solver Circle program. Essentially, for those people that have been doing FileMaker for a long time and sell FileMaker licensing, a big issue with FileMaker is the licensing systems that we have. It's really hard to understand for a lot of people. It's creating issues because a lot of the times is you never know whether you need to actually declare how many employees you have. So it's basically something that's being kind of confusing. We have way too many SKUs. So if you look at our sort of price book sheets, we have vaguely about FileMaker just 19. I think we've got like 3,000 SKUs, and it's very confusing for a lot of people. And what we did notice is we had people sort of buying FileMaker, whether it's licensing or just wanting to play with FileMaker, where one of the things that we're doing is either we're saying is, okay, how many users you have? Cool, you have 20 users, cool. And they were basically creating an app for one service inside the company. So like you've always had, you have a company that comes to you, they say, we want an application for our marketing department. We've got 20 people in that. Can we build an app for them? They buy FileMaker, they build the app, and they've just done one app for one entity in a large company, and it's pretty much all they go. And then the app keeps on living for 15, 10, 20 years. Eventually, the person who actually adopted FileMaker 20 years ago moves away, retires, and then suddenly people are going, oh, we bought FileMaker 20 years ago, but it's just doing one thing. Let's remove it out of the equation without even looking what the platform can do. So the program basically is there to actually says, let's remove that big problem with the license, and let's give basically every employee inside the organization the usage of FileMaker. Well, I should say Claris. You get the whole basically platform. So everyone in the company can start playing with FileMaker to create apps. Everyone can actually start playing with Connect if they want to create workflows just for their sort of department. They get access to all the tools that we have. So pretty much we are giving the whole of every product done for Claris developers, and so they can do whatever we want with it. Because what we've noticed is if in one company they do one app, and no matter how big it is, once the usage of that app becomes under discussion by someone else, eventually it will go away. If you have two apps in the company, it's a lot easier to actually get the app to be removed. So if you look at the world of when people use Microsoft, the reason Excel is being used so massively by so many companies is because everyone doing different usage of Excel. And so you can't remove it from the company. You can't suddenly say, oh, we're not going to buy Excel anymore. Because so many people are doing different stuff with it, it's going to be really hard for you to actually replace that. And so this is what we're trying to actually get to, is the fact that inside the company, whether it's your own or your customers, is to be able to actually sort of get them decided that you could use FileMaker for more than one thing. And so that's what we give in the raw platform. So if you're a partner, basically, we send you some emails. If you're internal developers, we've been sending a lot of emails. The idea that's a two-year program, and you pretty much get everything with it. So you get anonymous users, you get Claris Connects, you can start playing with it, and you get Claris Studio. I'm going to show you 20 seconds of Claris Studio, just to give you kind of an idea of what it does. As I said, it's a preview, so it's you wouldn't be able to actually use it in production. We've built it in one data center on the US West Coast of the US. It kind of moves away because we're doing a lot of changes on it. So if you've actually have a customer or you, for yourself, you've actually brought into the program, don't expect to be a production system for the time being. It's really there for people to actually start playing with it. So if you quickly, basically, so you go to Claris, platform at claris.com, it's going to ask you to actually sign in. So we're creating a new type of user login. So it's kind of what we had for Claris ID for Cloud and Connect, but it's slightly different. Log into my system. So we've kept basically the Claris Studio sort of homepage really straightforward. You have your team where you could actually invite other users in your company to be able to actually use that. As it's not a user-based system, you can invite 10,000 people to an account. It doesn't matter because we're not sort of using it by users. It's based on forms. So there's no pricing on that. So we can't tell you how it's going to be priced because we haven't yet figured it out. But that basically will be in the future. It's using a data API in the background. So it will be something around pricing around the API. So to create a form, basically you have this interface, which is really straightforward for the time being. Is you have an edit page. You can create different sort of add pages between the flow, but it's really static. You create a page, it does something else, go to next. There's no interaction with a database in the background. So if you imagine to use Claris Studio to get data back, get it out of a FileMaker system into Claris Studio, for the time being, it doesn't do that. So I'm creating a small one for me, and it works kind of basically the similar that we had when we had the QuickSight experience. Is you drag object onto the layout, and then basically, because it has responsive design, it's going to move the objects in the right location. So currently, I've got a bit of text here. I've got my header with an icon. I've got this field for the name. I can move that around. It's going to move all the objects in the right environment for me, if I do it properly. So it's really sort of kind of straightforward. I can see in terms of field objects, you have the same stuff that we have in QuickSight experience. There's a couple of static objects. And currently, that's pretty much it. On the sidebar, you can only create, you have one table, and where you can actually see all the various fields that you have below that. The next page that I've done is a confirmation once someone actually filled in information. You can preview that. So obviously, if I go, you have a laptop version, so you can have a tablet version. So it's basically move the stuff around. And I've got a mobile version where, as you can see, some of the stuff isn't really working properly, but we're working on that. But most of the stuff is actually working on it. Once my page is done, I can share it. So it's going to create a link for me. And then if I open that up, I'm going to be able to actually fill in information. So how does that work with Claris Pro? So this is my small contact that I have. It runs locally, and it's able to actually sort of connect to the data table of Claris Studio. So if I quickly go into the manage area of my system, you'll be able to actually see that I've got a Claris Studio data source where I've actually got the fields being synchronized from my Claris Studio account. Same as we can do with ESS, you can create calculation field and summary field, but the rest basically stays the same. So I'm going to have to cheat a bit because as everything, it's demo world. I'm going to move that out of the way so you don't see it. So if I fill this in and type in my name, my email address is the Claris one. So which platform I'm going to use? FileMaker Pro, and PGS works with this, and this. I do submit. If I go back to my studio home, I'll be able to actually see the data. So this is the data that I filled in. If I go in FileMaker, by the magic of the demo gods, if I click on that, come on, do it for Daddy there. Anyway, you'll see it in a couple of seconds. It takes a bit of time. As I was saying before, it's in a demo still environment, so it's not going to work straight away. There you go. The information from here is now being fed into my FileMaker system. So it is like early days. This is essentially for people to actually have an idea of what we want to do in the future, but this is where we are now. So obviously we are giving kind of this really early access to people that basically are going on to a 2-year journey with us. We're going to open up the Claris Platinum Partners, where we'll create sandbox environments. And then further down the line, we'll be opening up for Claris partners, developers, pretty much anyone who wants to actually start playing with it. And obviously, is because as we are learning with you and where we want to go, we just don't want to give it to everyone at day one and just basically see what people can do. The idea is that we want to have a huge amount of feedback from the community to actually see whether where we are going is in the right direction. So this is a slow process, and everyone basically wants to actually have the new tools straight away. The idea is this is like a journey for the next, I would say, like 2 to 3 years between Claris and the community working as a whole to be able to actually sort of get to potentially having the best product out there, and so that Claris can actually keep on going for the next, let's say, like 30 years without any issues. That was pretty much it for me. I imagine there's going to be questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Silence, Doug. I think everyone's stunned into silence. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's really fascinating, actually. And it's great to see where Claris is going. So I'm sure there must be loads of people with questions out here. Does anyone want to jump in with a question for Doug?
Yes, good evening. And thanks for allowing us on the other side of the pond to participate. With the studio forms, are those embeddable into other sites, or is that a standalone destination?
But this very first version, you can't actually embed. It lives there. It's in our website. That's what it's doing for the time being. So, but really, the thing is, this is like early days. So this is really a preview of a preview. If you're having ideas of what you wanted to take, give us the feedback, and then we work with you to actually sort of see how people are going to be using it. But don't actually see that as the final product or the final version of what it's going to be. There's going to be like a lot of iteration to where it's going to be to the level that it needs to be a very cool product.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. Just trying to get a sense for where you're positioning. If you're trying to bring new people into the fold, clearly Forms is a very structured, small entry point.
Yeah.
And putting that in their existing websites is a hook.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that, I mean, we have like already like thousands of people, so thousands of ideas of how you want to do stuff. Like even like the URL currently is Claris, it's the Claris format. So the idea is to be able to eventually give you the option to actually have it what label as much as you want and stuff like that. So, but it's baby step. It's so we're playing with it and stuff like multi-tenancy and how many users we basically can have on the same time going to sort of those web forms. is stuff that we're playing on. So. I think there's a hand up, Claris.
Hello, Doug.
Hey,
appreciate the. It's nice to see you. Very nice demo right there. So my question is, I have been playing around with Claris Studio, and I would expect to have some access to the CSS, so I could customize the UI for a client. Is there any roadmap to allow us to play around with the CSS? And basically, just extending Dan's question, I would also expect the same thing that Dan, apologies if I don't pronounce the name correctly, I would expect the ability to iframe that into a client's website or something else that we might be building. So those are the two questions.
Definitely, yes to everything. So it's going to take a bit more time. The thing is, we want to learn from all the errors we made in FileMaker and be able to get people on a journey to understand that some stuff that we were allowing before, even though it gave you a lot of power over your solution, meant that eventually it could actually make it, I would say, ugly on very hard to actually be able to use it. Like themes are great stuff. The problem is on our end, what we didn't do is we never really explained to people that how it was working in the background and the stuff that they should do every day when they create new solutions or updating it to make sure that the CSS was actually done properly. So when we're working on this sort of new environment, the idea is to we're gonna try to actually limit as much as you can errors being made, but giving the openness. So potentially maybe the way you do your themes is not going to be done directly into the layout as you're doing now. It could be done in a different environment where you would actually create, first of all, your objects, your CSS, and then you'll be using that in the app. Exactly like you've seen on a demo. All the stuff is being creating beforehand, and then you use them to actually create your layout. This is kind of the stuff that we want to do so that you're reusing the proper tools that have been creating the proper way. Some of the stuff like we're doing with the add-ons. So even the add-ons is kind of a learning path for us, is we create add-ons, we get partners to create add-ons so that something that's been created properly can be reused again and again and again. And so you don't actually have to restart from scratch. Like when people basically have systems where there's like 1,000 layouts, there's bound to be a couple of objects that are meant to be exactly the same. They're going to have like different fonts, different sizes, stuff like that, which is creating a lot of extra data in your system, which is basically slowing your system. And so you're saying at the end that your FileMaker system is actually bad. Essentially, it's actually bad because we've actually maybe sometimes allowed you to actually do those mistakes where we should have maybe created something to actually go, hey, by the way, you know that your label box for your whatever is used like 1,000 times in your system, but it has 70 variation. And the idea is, how do we actually stop that? So the idea is to create tools early in advance so that you can actually start recreating some of that work in a better way. It's going to take time because we've allowed developers this huge freedom. And so we have to give you a huge amount of freedom, but with boundaries. And that's where it gets really hard, is where do we actually put the boundaries? And so it has to work for new users because we want to grow the community, but it has to work for people that have been there for a very long time, that keep on creating great apps, and that suddenly just don't go, okay, but I can't do half of what I used to be able to actually do in FileMaker. I'm gonna move forward with them. And so this is where we are trying to get to. So Claris Corner is a good example for us to be able to actually talk with more people, but the idea is to be able to keep on getting this dialogue out, to really sort of, especially more once we have like more iteration of Studio, to get feedback from people saying, okay, you have your FileMaker solution, you've been using WebDirect for, I don't know, 7-8 years. See whether some of the stuff in Studio is going to work for you. If it doesn't, let's see how we can actually sort of use those two tools together to potentially give you a better stuff.
Great, thank you, Doug.
Thanks.
Hey,
Tony?
Go on.
hey, Doug, if I may, you mentioned themes, and if I heard you right, you're like, some people are doing themes wrong. I would be very interested in hearing more about any knowledge that you're able to put forth now or, whenever, about how to do themes. We did the custom theme. First one we did, we got it wrong, in my opinion. We spent hundreds of hours, let's say, and we have a 10-page infographic internal before we built our second theme, which was a slipstream from Classic. Did a 1-hour presentation on how to do it, did an extensive blog post. Anything we've gotten wrong in terms of how to build efficient themes with the current tooling, I would be very much interested in hearing. I'm also I'm gonna go find the blog, the Under the Hood, that was done by Andrew Paulson, who I believe was one of the architects, perhaps the lead architect in the layout design surface as a background. But we've done some massively deep dives on this topic, and I would be very interested in hearing what we might be doing wrong.
So essentially, it's all about from what I'm seeing, so basically whenever there's like a Claris partner review or an SBS solution, I do a lot of the reviews. What I'm seeing a lot of the time is, especially when your system is been living for a long time and it has like so many layout development, is you whenever, like, the problem is even in FileMaker nowadays is when you create a new layout, you start from scratch. Is pretty much either you do a duplicate of a previous layout, but normally people just create new layouts and they change all the stuff. And when you use an object and then you give it a style and then you play around with it, you have like those two very, very tiny red arrows that actually tells you that the changes that you made are not saved with the main themes. And so basically stays in your sort of local CSS inside the file. There is nothing in FileMaker that tells you it's the wrong way to do it. But when you have a massive system that's been living for long times and you do a save as XML copy of it, and then you have a file that gets exported in XML that has like 1 million lines of XML sort of elements that weighs 150 megabytes, and then you can see all the various stuff. It gives you an idea basically of all the extra stuff that you've done that hasn't really been cleaned up. And the problem is the software doesn't tell you that you should be cleaning up. It's a manual process, and it takes ages. I mean, I've had partners who were doing SBS solutions that were shouting in my face saying, but do it for me because I've got 1,500 layouts and it's going to take me weeks to do it. And I've got a customer tomorrow who wants to buy it. And it is really a big pain, and especially if you're starting using classic themes from a long time ago, to be able to actually remove it, it is really a massive pain. So the idea is we want to take that pain away from you and to give you better tools so that you can do the same stuff. But let's say you are recreating or you're changing the style of one of the, of whatever in the system, it will tell you, hey, by the way, in that layout, you've already using it with a different font. Are you sure you basically want to swap and stuff like that? So more tools in the background to be able to actually sort of help you. Now, a lot of it works better on the cloud because we can have some AI in the background to actually sort of see how you're developing it. And we'll see whether we can actually sort of have it everywhere, but that's the idea, is to be able to help you do what you're best at, which is developing, problem solving solutions, not figuring out why FileMaker works in a weird way when you're doing various stuff. So it is a big problem for people that basically have long-standing solutions where they haven't been able to actually take the time to actually clean up the themes. But and this is where we're going to take this slow approach from moving from FileMaker products to like Claris products, is to give basically the option for people to actually tell them, okay, let's start looking at themes. And we're working with partners who've done some great stuff like you, Tony, like Alexis and stuff like that across the planet, to actually sort of go is, okay, this is how you should start looking at cleaning up your system so that when you move that to the newer Claris product, it's going to work better. It's going to be more efficient and stuff like that. So it's going to take time, but that's where we want to try to get to.
So that sounds good. I feel a little bit better based on what you said, because I think we're doing a bunch of the things correct here. You know, we're off Classic in less than a minute per layout, 15 seconds per layout at most. In terms of cleaning up the local CSS, which I believe what you're talking about. Coincidentally, over the weekend, we're doing version 4 of our custom themes, and I'm using the base elements which has the layout objects, and I'm using a little Apple script. I just dropped a link to it, which basically I click a button and it goes to the file, it goes to the layout, it goes to the layout mode, and it puts a little spotlight on the object that has excessive local CSS. So I'm able to do, I believe, the process you're talking about more rapidly than I would otherwise. That all said, if you've got better, keep the tools coming. Awesome platform, awesome tooling, keep it coming. In the meantime, we're doing what we're doing, and it's working pretty well for us here. Thank you.
And the thing is as well is what we were saying is I mean, talking to a community of people that actually know what I'm talking about is actually quite useful. But there's like so many companies out there where we have junior developers, when we talk about, they have no idea what we're talking about. So we had to explain to them as well, okay, you've been doing that, it looks cool basically, but when you look at your code, the reason your system is a lot of time is being slow is because you have all the sort of extra stuff around it. And so we have to be able to get the message that people like you understand it, and that's quite quick. And people that basically are going to have more issues when they're going to go, hang on a sec, how come your software doesn't actually do that for me? And this is where there's like a different sort of dialogue that we have to sort of get into. But this is where we want to go, which is what we're saying is community and partners and sort of top developers are really important, because without your help, it's going to be really hard for us to actually convince everyone else that what we're doing is on the right track. Well,
you're welcome to reach out. I mean, Alex from Canada, or I probably mispronounced her name. She's done a ton of really useful stuff. And there are a ton of layouts out there still on Classic, so there is a need for the things that you're talking about, because everything that you do, every layout that runs faster, it does make the platform look like it should look. So it sounds like a good initiative. Good, I appreciate it.
And we have planned to do more under the hood session. There's Romy on the call, so she'll be glad I mentioned that. But this is an idea that we're having, is to be able to sort of go deeper into how really some of the stuff works inside it, so that you get a better understanding of it, so that once you start moving to the newer tools inside the FileMaker, the switch or the transition is going to be easier. I mean, we don't want to have like a FileMaker 7 again or some of that stuff. I mean, for people that were there at FileMaker 7, it was kind of a pain.
I remember that well.
So it's the transition that will take a couple of years, and it's not just on one day they'll say, okay, you have to do it that way. It's basically like baby steps.
So are we looking at a change of file format, since we've had this one since 12, which is great? I mean, I can't complain.
At this time, it hasn't been really decided. It may or may not. We don't really know. We'll see.
Okay, Doug, I've got a couple of technical questions, nothing major.
Okay.
The version of Ubuntu, I take it yours version 20.04. Is that the sub-version updates of that as well, not just the LTS? You'll take version 2004.4?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because there's a big CVE for the original. So you don't want to be using the original.
Yeah, so we use
there's a CVE security for that, so you need to patch it. That's the point.
Yeah, we test all of them. I think all the latest one anyway.
Okay, cool, fine. And you mentioned the parallel backups. One thing I wanted to understand is what do you mean by parallel backups? I know what the word parallel means, but how are you interpreting what parallel backups are? How are you planning on that working?
So the way it works is, so let's say you have like 125 files on your system, and what the API is learning is the files actually work together. It will create groups to actually sort of backups. Files actually work together at the same time. So let's say you have like a contact system and an event management. Those two are linked. You use them all the time. Instead of actually backing up pretty much everything that actually goes around it, it will just basically back up those two files in a secure folder. And so that if you want to retrieve the information, it's going to be quicker, because it's not going to have to go through the whole process of looking at all the files in your system. It just basically will know that those two files were backed up together. And so if you want to retrieve them, it will just do the action on those two files at that time.
Okay. Have you sorted out progressive backup so you can run progressive backups on some files on your server? Because that would be really useful.
So Para Backup will do that for you.
It will do that for you. So you could pick so that is in essence creating that container of a solution, which may be a subset of the whole solution. Yeah. And then run that as basically progressive.
Yeah. So those two will work together in conjunction. So the idea is basically is it will learn from your backups to back up what is being used the most.
Okay.
And so that retrieving the backup will be a lot quicker, and then backing up will be a lot quicker.
Cool. Fine. And the only question I had was on Claris Studio. Is that open for everyone to join from today, tomorrow, or what?
So the program opened up last week. So sadly, anyone who's on the site license doesn't get access to it for the internal sort of early preview. What we'll do is once we're actually creating more sandbox, we'll start inviting people in the preview to be able to actually play with it. So this like phase one isn't really going to move much, but there's going to be sandbox versions that we'll create that will be more targeted based on some of your needs. And so there'll be like different, like it's like an ETS, but at different level. There's like the entry level one, which we're giving to people now to play around with. And there'll be extended ones for premium partners and stuff like that. That has a bit more functions so that you can have a better idea of where we're trying to actually get to.
Okay. And the
but
last
essentially what it's doing nowadays is just doing a web form where you're filling sort of field and stuff like that. You send it out. That's pretty much it. So.
And in the presentation I watched, it was saying that Claris is free for everyone for a single user if you are working with a client, in effect, or you were trying to do something. It's free until you publicize it, until you go out. So if you've got a new client, I just
for the freemium version, okay. So the freemium version isn't really out yet. It's going to take a bit of time to actually be there. What we're doing is, we are creating a Claris Pro that you'll be able to actually download from the App Store directly on the Mac. We're still figuring out how we're going to do on Windows, where you'll be able to actually create, and anyone will basically be able to create a FileMaker app free of charge without having to pay anything. There won't be any option to actually share the data, so you won't actually have like peer-to-peer sharing, stuff like that. If you want to basically share the information with someone else that's in the file through either Studio, server, cloud, whatever we have, that's where you basically will have a contract with Claris, and then based on whatever we come up, whether it's a user-based system or a data storage or data transfer, that's what you'll be actually paying for. So the idea of creating your app through Claris Pro will be free of charge. Because currently the problem with FileMaker, for any user, unless you're part of this school that has a special license, you have to buy FileMaker and then create your app and then figure out whether it's the right tool. Which in a lot of places, just go, this is mental. I want to play with it, and then afterwards decide whether I want to pay for it. So before that, we had the FDS, which we thought, well, the FDS was just there to be able to give some tools to some people. The idea is we remove the FDS, we give all the tools that we have, and then people start playing with the product, create the app, and eventually decide how they want to pay for it based on their needs.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I've got a couple of clients that I'm trying to get FileMaker into them, and they're like, well, okay, how does this work? And I'll be the first to say on record that I don't think FileMaker is expensive. So, but needless to say, with new clients, they always struggle to understand how you get this. And it's like, well, you sign up for a license and then we'll build the solution. They're like, well, can't you build the solution? Then I sign up for a license. So I welcome what's coming. I really do. I think it's a great idea. So you can put a local standalone on a single workstation. There's no server with that. It's not hosted, I believe. It's just local, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, fine. I think it's a great idea. Great idea. And this has been a long time coming. I think this is going to change the way people will adopt the platform in that respect, because they can get their hands on it. They can physically use it, which is great.
Yeah. And even like the FDS, I mean, the FDS is what's $89, $99, 79 pounds. For big ones, I mean, in large organization, it's even a problem for people to just basically be able to actually invoice £79 and figure out where to put it in a system. I mean, even for us internally within Apple, if I buy a software at $99, it takes me an hour and a half to actually put it through our system. And so for an organization, you just go, it's too hard. Can I just get I just want to basically play with it properly. And like we gave it a trial version of 45 days, but 45 days doesn't give you sort of a lot of time. So the idea is you get it from the App Store, you play with it for as long as you want.
Yeah, I like the idea.
Question on that one. Will there be any parts of that freemium version that's kind of hidden out so that you can't use them, or how will that work? I mean, like developer tools and other things, will they still be available, or?
So anything that will allow you to bypass the licensing system will be removed. That's all I'm going to say.
Sorry, Johan, I think what you were saying is if you built a solution, because it's one user, the only user has to be the admin. So therefore you can't show anyone it because you're too scared to show them, because then they'll start messing around with the file that you've spent hours or years creating or months or whatever. So could the standalone file have multiple users? You can't share it, can't do anything. So you can then say, here's your user account, but I've got the admin account. But the way I read that is it's a single user. So if it's a single user, you can't really deploy it to the client.
So if to be able to actually share it with anyone, even for testing, you will have to actually publish it to either the Claris Studio Cloud or a Claris server if you have one.
So considering this, that you have a client that might be interesting of testing something, you build something for them, and then they download the freemium as well, then I need to pay for hosting that file for them to actually play around with it.
So similar to what you have now as a partner, you have the option to actually set up a server so that people can actually access, and it will be done in vaguely in the same way. So as a developer, if you're a Claris partner, obviously, you'll have basically your own server, and you'll be able to actually get people to download FileMaker and view the app you've created for them that's actually hosted on your server.
Can I suggest a potential change to like your whole setup of this? Why don't you have it as a single user access only? So therefore I can create multiple users, but therefore I can't edit it, I can't change it. It's a single user access only, because that'll be a better way of delivering it, because then you can give it to the client and say, you can have that for 3 months, have a look and check. But at the point I want to then, oh, I've got a team of 5 that now want to use it, great, you pay for the licensing, put 5 people on it. But at the moment, there's only one single user access on a single workstation, it can't be hosted. That as a solution surely is going to get you more traction out there in the public.
That's what's my main thought here, that you might do some really good to just give them a attention of what we can actually do with FileMaker, and therefore like giving them a chance to play around with it for a few weeks. And then you might be able to build them a huge, powerful solution in the long run, but just to give them a hiccup of what we can do.
And then take your technology and just download the app themselves and run away with it.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to the runtime solution.
Yeah, we don't want to go that far. Please no.
Yeah. No, it's not that. It's not the fact of hosting. It's the fact of, even if it's in Claris Cloud, it's that point of saying, well, that could be hosted on a different Claris Cloud solution that's a single user only. It's something that I think Claris could govern and maintain that.
Yeah. Cool. I'll take it. Yeah.
Or it's a fixed length trial. So once you've built it, you get, like Johan, you were saying, if you built something like that, you could then put it into Claris Cloud free for 30 days as a single user, because you got that hosting, so you can give it to them with the security on it for a period of time. That's where your trial should start, I think. Give them the free tool to download it and work on it and so forth. For newcomers to the platform, I think that's great.
Yeah. Cool, I'll take a note of that.
Cool. Does anyone else raise their hand for a question? No, I haven't got anyone. Does anyone want to say anything?
Yes.
Shoot.
Love to just follow up from what you said, Gary. That previous discussion, Johan, was really interesting. And what I understood from it, and it's interesting, is I think what Claris are looking at and what you're talking about is 2 slightly different users. It's one, is how do you get people into, as new developers, to start working with FileMaker themselves, developing their own apps and going, this is a cool tool. And that's a different model. And you were just talking about how do we, professional developers, say Claris is a great tool. And I think that's a really important point that Claris should think about. It's actually as two sort of versions of the free FileMaker. That's just throwing that in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there is two versions of it. If you find someone
does that make sense, Doug, as well? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I might throw my question into the ring. When it comes to theming, is there any chance that you'd be able to have more kind of CSS text level access into editing objects within the FileMaker Pro or Claris Pro solution itself, rather than having to kind of backdoor into the XML and change things there?
At this time, no idea. Can tell you what they want to do. We are kind of coming with different ideas, seeing what's the easiest to leverage, put in place, and for people to play around with. So yeah, it's early days.
Because that would be highly appreciated by me, because I've got some very demanding production/designers that work with what I make, and little things like having text being at the right level of leading dynamically throughout a paragraph and things like that is tricky. And in addition to that, one other question that I don't know if you've had before, is there any way that you'd be able to have text overflow between two separate objects at any point? So if you've got, say, like 100 words, but you can only display 50 on one text object, the overflow could be moved into another, like you'd see in InDesign or Microsoft's Publisher.
Not rows, but lines of text flowing from one column of field into the next column of the same field.
Yeah, because as it stands, the only way I can do that is by finding out the character count per line and then working out how many carriage returns or lines are entered into it, and then doing a calculation to get the chunks of overflowed text.
Isn't there a JavaScript library that actually does that?
Potentially, but I would prefer to have it not in JavaScript, native. Just as a native FileMaker.
Yeah.
That's it from me.
So Ed, are you using get layout object height to determine what fits in a box?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it gets tricky because
you'd have to move it word by word until.
Yeah.
May I ask what the difference is between the App Store version of FileMaker and the non-App Store version? I mean, there may be things you have to disallow if Apple shakes you like any other developer.
Yeah, so to be able to actually be on the App Store in terms of like what it can talk or what the app can do, that will be removed. So there will be stuff that actually will not be there at first. Unless you sign up unless you have a FileMaker, a Claris server or a Studio account, in which case it will allow you to actually do all the stuff that you want to.
No, I mean, will you do put the app in a sandbox like all the App Store apps?
Yeah.
And then, of course, I hope you still have the version on the website without the sandbox.
Yeah. Yeah, there will be two versions.
Doug, could I ask a quick question about Claris Studio that's been released to some of the partners?
Yep.
So there's a download tab there, and you can download FileMaker 20 from it. But if you download that and you try and connect to Claris Studio, at least in the version I downloaded for the Mac, using Claris Studio as a data source is not an option in the relationships graph. And so I was wondering if there was a separate, ESS Plus driver or something that needed to be installed alongside that.
So you've signed up to Claris Studio ID inside your Claris Pro?
Yep, and I downloaded 20 from Claris Studio. And then when I launched that Claris Pro and open the relationships graph, make a new file, open the relationships graph, try and add that as a data source, it's not an option.
Yeah, that was a problem for me too.
Same here.
Yeah, and we did see a video that someone had posted where they did see a Claris data source. There's a video out there from Venta. Who's that from, Chris?
Let me post it. I have a link to it. Copy.
And that's why we assumed it would be available.
I will put it in the chat here.
When did you sign up to Claris Studio?
Over the weekend.
Last week, actually, Chris.
Okay. Did you talk to Mark Grantham, or have you had a call with Mark Grantham yet? Not yet.
I'm sorry, I missed that part.
No, have you had a call set up with Mark Grantham for the onboarding?
No, we have not.
No. Okay. So he's going to reach out to you, and he'll be able to actually help you online, just to make sure that your account is properly created.
Okay, I was definitely able to make a new form and a flow and all that kind of stuff. It's just that when I downloaded the installer, it didn't seem to have the ability to connect to Claris Studio.
Yeah, and just to add some color to so from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Douglas, is there's not enough space in the current sandbox. And so they're giving access to Platinum partners with the understanding that the Platinum partners will do workshops. And, our interpretation of workshops is, if you're not a Platinum partner and want access to Claris Studio, we will, set you up a Zoom and you can play around with it, be interactive with our sandbox. And so that was a way for, leveraging the current sandbox and letting anyone else who wants to see it and play with it, use it. And so we're going to do that at .fmp, but we'll also, happy to help any partner who wants to try it out.
So your version of Studio, is that it's not the one you haven't bought into the program? You're getting it through being a Claris Platinum partner.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so it's not on yet for you. That's probably why you're not seeing it. It's going to come later on this week. So we having
the sandbox for the Claris Platinum partners is
not up yet. No, it should be done after we have the call with Robert on Wednesday.
And so this isn't just an interpretation. This is this was when we received the sandbox, that was what we signed up for, was that we would help or enable other Claris partners to try it out, since they could only give a limited number. It's not part of buying a license and being involved in it or anything.
Okay, cool. Okay, so that one basically will be up and running later on this week.
Okay.
No other questions? How are we doing for time, Jul?
We're about 15 minutes ahead of your schedule of your talk, but we could carry on with something else if people want to. I just had a quick, I actually had one final quick question for Doug. It's kind of occurred to me, I don't even know if it's appropriate, but if I've got a client which has got various bits of data that are filled in for his system from people using WebDirect, because they're not internal to the company, they're just customers of theirs. So is it possible to get data from the system onto a form as you were showing us? For example, it's a school and it's a number of pupils whose data has to be filled in for something. can we use the form to that you were showing to, would it be possible to use that form to get that data back into the system? Or is that an entirely inappropriate use?
Not for the time being. Eventually, yes, that's where we'll get it to. But for the time being, it doesn't do that. For the time being, it's like a static web page that you create. You send a link, people fill it in, and that goes into your Claris Studio data stores. And that's pretty much all it does. And then you grab it, that information into your FileMaker solution. That's all you can do for the time being.
Okay.
So if you wanted to actually have like interactive content into your form, you would need to create manually a form for each student where you'll say, hello, Douglas, with all the information for him. But there will be a form for each user. So manually, you have to, there's no automatic way of doing it for the time being. That will come down the line once we have more. So yeah, we want to do, so currently is you can view data inside of Studio, in Claris Studio data inside of FileMaker. You can't modify it. You can't delete it. You just can view the data. And the idea is to eventually have this bidirectional synchronization so that you can view the data, change it, and do all the stuff that you want to do around it. And then on top of that, you'll be able to connect on top of that. So some of the flows and stuff you'll do, you instead of actually talking from FileMaker to Claris Studio, you're talking to Connect, which will basically do the stuff for you in Studio.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Anyone else?
Well,
should we go to you? Oh, go ahead.
Again, a follow-up to Gary. It's kind of a follow-up to what you said, Jul. And if I missed it at the beginning, sorry, but a question for Doug was, because I've been doing stuff with Claris Connect and done a couple of presentations at the meetup. And then you just mentioned what Jul said, where Connect fits into that. And I'm quite interested in where Connect is going, which I think I know, but I don't know. Do you want to say anything about that? How Connect works with this new version of things?
So essentially what we're doing with Connect is we are creating what we call the connector kit. So basically, instead of us figuring out how to actually get the connectors between whatever service to work with Connect and whatever, we are creating a kit that will give to developers so that they can create their own kit. And within that kit, there will be the option to actually have FileMaker scripts being triggered directly within Connect and vice versa. So the idea is to get the data inside of FileMaker or any FileMaker app that you have to be able to actually sort of properly talk to Connect to do whatever it needs to do in Studio. So the stuff that we talked about a year and a half ago that I've been trying to work on, but because of a lot of the work that we were doing for on the Connect side was for the Apple Score Manager and the Apple Business Manager solutions through the integration of SIS data for schools in the US, means that we haven't been able to actually deploy all the stuff that we wanted to do on Connect, but that's the next step.
But it's kind of going to be a part of what's coming then, is it? So yeah. I've always thought Connect is going to go somewhere it's not there yet. That's how I felt about it.
Yeah, the idea really now is basically to actually look at everything being the same platform, and whatever we build is there to be sort of be used. So similar to the data migration tool, the upgrade tool, is to incorporate them directly inside the platform, so that if you want to use them, you don't actually have to figure out how to do with it. It's pretty much built in the system. You say, okay, I want to basically between those two files, move all my new layouts and new scripts from this file, my testing environment, my production. You click one thing, it does it for you and stuff like that. So all the stuff that takes ages to do is pretty much is to do within the platform.
Sounds good. And Connect's very easy to use, but it has some quirks.
It has, yeah. It's and it hasn't really moved yet for that much. There's a lot of stuff that we've done in the background, like sort of to be able to make it more clever, and especially when data's not going in the proper way. So we're trying to play around with like a bit of AI to sort of alert us of errors when they actually do come up. But it's taking a bit of time. So we are actively working on fixing these issues.
Doug, just another one that's kind of, it's a bit like what Edward was asking. In fact, it probably is exactly the same question written in another way. Are we going to be able to say we have a website which has got a CSS style sheet? Is there going to be any way to easily marry that up to a FileMaker style sheet? Or is there a plan to do that?
I don't know, probably. I'll check it out. Maybe it's something we can do with CSS.
I think it'd be pretty beneficial to a lot of people.
Mm.
Hey, Doug, by the way, thanks, Gary and Jules, for hosting, and Doug for showing up, taking questions. I heard you say everything being the same platform. I'm going to drop a link here that might be worth looking at. One of the things that we run into when we're developing for Mac, Windows, iOS, and web is the fonts. And that's one point. So the link is a post on FMSoup where there's a big productivity bump depending on the fonts used and also the way that they're touched or not touched. It's a little bit of an obscure technical point. So I did some screenshots about that. And Doug, I'm just trying to pick up on something you said about, developer productivity and, things that can be done so that people are making the most of the platform, making us all look good. Anyway, long story short, fonts that work across all platforms would help. Since you cover so many platforms, anything that would make code that's written in Mac or Windows more portable across 4 different platforms. Bit of a challenge. Maybe Apple can design some fonts if they know how to do that.
You can. The biggest problem with fonts is licensing.
Is licensing?
Like the one, it is a nightmare. Like the one that you use so on FileMaker Cloud, the typical one that people want to use is I can't remember, say Helvetica or whatever. But there's the cloud version of the cloud version of that. It's got a different name, but it doesn't do every language. So like for Japanese, we have to get a special font to actually mimic what is actually thing, and a lot of it is actually around licensing. And everyone's been trying to create like fonts that will actually work on every system, and to my knowledge, there aren't that many basically that actually are there. So.
Well, I think it would require a sponsor. I'm not a lawyer and I don't know. I thought that if someone did a font, you're just basically drawing vector. But if you're purchasing, then obviously you got to get licensing. But if you're designing your own with Fontographer or whatever, then you're, anyway, big productivity, just report from the field. The amount of productivity possibilities are massive. Might even address some of the things Edward was talking about earlier.
Yeah. And even showing you how
I'd steer away from using any custom fonts at all within FileMaker personally. Use the stock standard ones only. We have the same thing on our website when we're looking at stuff. You just want clear, easy readable content on any solution that you build. So like IBM do a really, really clear, which is known as the best for visually impaired, all that sort of stuff. So if you're starting to look at fonts for your solution, you've got to build for those sort of scenarios as well. You just want the most standardized fonts that you've got. I agree with what you're saying, Tony. It needs to be a standardized open type font base that works cross-platform across everything. And that's the only way you can guarantee you build stuff. It is a nightmare. We're a mixed environment as well. We're Windows and Mac, so same problem. We get the same problem as well. So.
There are some fonts that do work cross-platform. Goya did a beautiful blog post. It's on the page that I posted there. The target the same height. One of the things that is not completely widely known is that whoever designed the layout surface made it such that fonts on Windows, even though they render wider, auto expand. So whoever did that wrote some clever code there. Didn't tell everybody about it. But just same height, and then you're all of a sudden Verdana, 11 on 15. There's just some missing gaps there, and we were looking at it recently, just trying to find some things that where we want to be able to touch the layout on a Mac or touch the layout on Windows and have it work either way. So we're very close to having something that would have a substantial, 30–40% of the work that we do is layouts. And if you improves that by 10%, do the math, you make millions extra in licensing.
One font I've heard decent things about that's got an open license is Atkinson Hyperlegible. And it's partly designed by the Braille Institute for people, so it's legible for people that are also visually impaired. But yeah, it's got a fully open license for commercial and everything, so that might be useful.
I think unless you can find a way of automatically deploying fonts that custom fonts that you've added to your solution, you're going to have a bit of a problem generally, because as deployment becomes more and more diverse across web browsers, with Go and so forth, it's hard to tell people that they've got to use a specific font if you are using a more general environment for your deployment.
Yeah, it'd be a challenge, certainly on iOS. I know on the Mac, I know where to put them. So I would have the ability, and I would recommend that the font created by Apple be called FileMaker, or maybe Claris FileMaker. That would be the name of the font. But yeah, I don't know how on iOS, I guess Apple would just have to install it by default. Anyway, I'm not saying it's easy.
Have we got any more questions for Doug at this point? Because if not, I think we're actually scheduled for Gary's talk now. Doug, are you hanging around a bit? Will you be here later?
Yeah, I'm staying around. Yeah.
So we
don't have to do any work. So it's better for me to stay
we
here.
carry on haranguing you with questions that pop up in our minds later.
I'm going to give him a space of about 15–20 minutes to think about more questions for you, Doug, because they're not going to listen to these. They're going to come back with all the questions. That's fine. Cool.
Okay, cool. So Gary, go ahead.
So this is something we've been doing in our place for years. And I think going back to FileMaker 9, I think, going back that far, we were running this and doing our own solutions. This is me, you all know me, it's just in a normal slide deck, so I'll go over that, that's fine. Right, what led us to this? So what I want to go over is a scenario that led us down this path many years ago, and what we did and why we did it. So, and why we use local bots, and then a demo. So the scenario was, you could have a process on your server that's doing something, and it's merrily going along and doing its normal stuff that it does. So bot's plodding along doing its stuff. It's repeating itself every minute, every hour, every day, whatever it's doing. And then for some unknown reason, what ends up happening is the bot just ends up going rogue. So, and then goes mental and goes off and runs its own thing. And you're then scratching your head trying to work out what to do with it. So we started doing this ourselves. We've looked at what FileMaker's given us with form scripts on server. And either way you look at this, there's always going to be an instance where it could go rogue, something could happen, something could go wrong in your code, and you need to debug it, get into it, and so forth. So we had our own bot solution that we run locally to then manage this and work with it. So that's the scenario when it goes rogue. You feel a bit worried and a bit scared and everything's gone wrong and you panic. So why did we do this? Why did we create bots? What did we do? So these are the key areas that we focused on when we came up with the idea to build this and deploy this for our solutions. Some of you will know the extent of the FileMaker platforms that we work on. We have 4 servers, close to 260 odd files, and something like 50–60 active solutions in our company. So there's a lot of things going on within FileMaker. And so what we wanted to do is bring some control back to the developers to say, well, if you're developing an automation of any kind, you want to have some control of when it's active, when it's not active, how it's going to run, what frequency it's going to run. And we started looking at what options we had. So I think a lot of you that have done bots before, we call them bots, automation processes, whatever you want to call it, have gone down the same path that we've done as well and looked at this. So getting that control was, for us, the most important thing. We want to be able to stop a task from running at a given point in time. We can have a task run on a different schedule to a different task. You could have a task run on a trigger from a different script. Now, for us, that's a bigger solution because the script could run on a different server, and then we'd like to trigger the script to run on this server. So we've got all of these things to think about. So, and with our web team, when we launched our website online about 10 years ago, all of it's driven from FileMaker. The web team was saying, oh, we want to patch and we want to do stuff. So we wanted a way to just stop all the web functions from firing when a patch is going on. So it was how you control that and how we then address that with our solutions. And then the other one is midway through a script, what you can't do in server is debug the script when it's actually running. So that was one of the controls that came from what we've been requested from the developers that were doing stuff. And it's like, well, how can you do that? Well, if it's running on a machine, you can just jump on that machine, hit debug mode, put your password in, and that's it. The script will stop where it is. We all know that. We've all been there. We've all done that. So it gives you a bit more control over that. The other side of it was centralization of what we wanted. So we wanted it all under one control module, all under one roof. And the other side of it is we have a centralized log of all the automated scripts we run across all of our servers, across all of our solutions. So it gives an easy way for any of the developers to go in and debug a script, see how often it's run, when it ran, how it ran, its time, its instances, and you spot that. It came out the back of when we started using Zabbix for our logging. We wanted to actually extend that and put that into our automation process, because it's that thing of once you see a trend, you then get a better understanding of what's happening with that script. We've written scripts that have been running for probably 10, 15 years. Well, as the system's grown and built and been built on, as Douglas said earlier, in what's happening with styles and themes, you've got something that's on a classic theme that started years ago. It was fine when there was 10 records in the thing. Now there's 1 million records in it, and you've got searches and people doing stuff. It slows down. You can watch that script within the log get slower over a period of time. It gives you an idea of focus, what to deal with and what not to. So that was the other reason. I mentioned before multi-server, so we want to be able to run scripts on server 1. When that finishes, run scripts on server 2, and then take the result of that and then move that result to server 3. That's hard to do on perform scripts on server, if not impossible, apart from putting it into containers and other bits and pieces. I don't know how you do that. So the other one was performance. If you've got all this scheduling going on a server, one of our servers got like 100 odd files on it, managing that perform script on server scenario, automating those tasks within the server is a challenge, because you won't know when scripts are conflicting with each other, when they're both running at the same time. Perform script and server will fire up clients for you, not a problem. It'll fire 50 concurrent connections, no worries at all if they all run at the same time, which is great, apart from it's killed your server, made everything slow down. So we looked at it and went, well, we have 4 automation bots. We know we can only run 4 tasks at a given point in time. That doesn't mean to say we can't leverage perform scripts on server, because our bot system can run the scripts as perform scripts on server if you want to go to that sort of level. So you can offset. So it gives you a bit more control for performance. And the last one is flexibility. It's the fact that you guys are clever enough. Everyone's smart enough to write something in FileMaker. If you can write a process in the actual FileMaker client, you're not restricted by server. So if you've got an automation process, like we've got a lot of stuff that fires Apple scripts and runs different code and move files around, run terminal commands. That becomes more of a challenge if you're trying to do that with other pieces of software. So for example, as you know, I deal with all the BI and click data. Most of our click data is driven from FileMaker. So we've got automation tasks that are saying, well, FileMaker can get a hook now to then get a call from click to then fire a service in FileMaker via that link. So it gives you a lot more control and flexibility and more scope. So and that was the reason why we went about this. So what I want to do is just give you a quick preview of what it is. So this is it. It's running. There's 4 bots running here. And it's just running tasks. They're just running several tasks. So I'm just going to zoom into one of them. And I'm hoping, does that show that screen? So you see a single screen? Yeah, good, fine. Okay, I've proven that works. That's all I needed. Right, so from here, so we've got our tasks running here. So from this, I can hopefully zoom in a bit. If I go here, I can zoom in. Yes, I can zoom into that so you can see it a bit better. So what we've got here is we've got an ID on each task. Let's stop this one from running. So for a second, we're going to use this for control one, so you can see the others in the background, hopefully, and then I'll go through this. So each script has status, masters, priorities, various other triggers and flags. We can pick the days a script will run. You can even pick the machine you'd like to run it on. So you can go to that level. You can have a switch to tell whether it's on or off, so you can actually kill a script and stop a script and so forth. So if I scroll down here and I get to the bottom, there's going to be some red ones that will come up in a second. Here we go. So these are off. So we've deactivated those scripts. So we can individually go in and turn the scripts off. It tells you whether it's automated. We have two types. We have a switch script. So we can now fire a centralized script from a button that a user's running in a different solution. So a user could get to the end of what they're doing and say, I'd like to do a full update of all of our data. They press a button, our bot comes along, turns the script on, and then runs the update. So it also gives you, this is something that we developed when lockdown happened, because everyone went into remote working. Everyone's trying to work across a ISDN connection or a dial-up connection or whatever rubbish connection they've got at home. And they're going, oh, FileMaker's running really slow. We're saying, well, that task, don't worry about running it on your machine. Get our central machines to run it. That's on our LAN, on our network. It'll run really quick. So it's on gigabit and all fine, and it's super quick. The scripts will come in. They'll acquire, as you can see here, there's two scripts running at the moment. So FMBO2 is running and 6 is running because of the color coding. It comes along, the scripting acquires the record. It does some clever little scripting to lock the record so no other bot can run it. So it'll grab that, lock the record. Once it's got a lock on the record, it'll then go, right, I've got control of that. I can go and run the scripts that are behind this and then do whatever it needs to do. When it's finished, it unlocks the record. A different bot can come along and take it at that point. Obviously, you've got a script name. We've got an index number here, which we use for other things. And then it gets into this bit, which is the bit that's clever. So we do everything on seconds. So you can set the duration of the start and the end time. So this top script can run between 6 in the morning and 10 at night. It will run every 900 seconds. And it tells you when it last ran and when its next scheduled run is going to run. Okay. So this is saying it's scheduled to run at 12:09 and 12 seconds. It's currently 12:10. It takes on average the last duration to 2 minutes and 19 seconds to run that process. It's actively running at the moment, and I would imagine in about a minute's time that will finish and it will go grey and it will finish up. Okay. Further down the process, you can run a script by going into this module and hitting this clock, and you can say, force this to run right now. That then escalates it to priority, put it to the top of the stack. So it changes its last runtime, works out its schedules and says, put it next. That is in essence what it does. And then I'll go into a bit more details of how this works and so forth. So if you can see my screens in the background, typically they are all running something now. This is where the demo gods are a nightmare because I wanted one to at least be stopped. Stop now. So I'm going to stop the whole stack. So if I click this button to stop, you should see those screens in the background. They should go red in a second. So it'll run its process. If a task's already running, it's okay. It'll keep going. It'll finish that task and then it'll kill all the bots. It'll just stop them. So we can put a halt on all automations with one click of a button in the admin. So in a sec, please go red. Come on, they've all stopped. Here we go. One on the top left has gone red. So, and that's gone red as well. So if I move these, that tells you it's paused and they're just on waiting. So that's killed all our bot tasks. So if we've got something that we wanted to do and we don't want any automation tasks running for a period of time, click one button, killed all the processes. I haven't gone into server, I haven't had to do anything. And I know that's stopped. To give you an idea, there's 282 processes in this stack that is being managed by the file. So that's all going to stop. The one down the bottom right will stop in a minute, but I'm just going to start them up anyhow. So if I go to go all, you'll notice the two red ones will then clear their statuses and they've kicked off again and started off. So, as I was saying, for the web team, we have a point that we know that any script that's outside FileMaker, so it's with a third party, we can then say, we'll pull all the third-party scripts. So anything that's native FileMaker only uses FileMaker, doesn't use anything else. That's okay. But if some third party is going to do a patch on their system, we can go, well, let's stop FileMaker from hitting it because it's going to be down for a period of time. So we just put a stop on that. We can stop all the web ones. Our web guys usually patch first thing in the morning or whatever, usually about 8 in the morning. We look at our traffic on the site. So they come in and say, well, if we're patching at 8 in the morning, if FileMaker run around, are they going to stop the process? They need to click the button. The bot system will just stop all their processes. They can patch the servers very safe. When they're finished, they can run a command which tells that to deactivate if they want, or we can get them to fire it and they can stop their processes. From a log point of view, this will show you the log. So it shows you every single task that's run. We've got failed tasks because scripts go wrong, hence the bot run away. If I search failed tasks, thank you, that's a good sign. There aren't any, so everything's good, and I haven't just deleted them. So we can find and isolate what's today. If I go over here, it gives you an idea of, we have nightly processes that we run in our stack. So if I go to the core nightly processes, here they are. This process takes 5 hours. So that's how much data I move in FileMaker. So that's a 5-hour task. It's basically a control program that runs these other scripts. So we've created that's that master thing. You run a control, a bot gets acquired, it's going to run all those tasks. If it gets halfway through and fires out and crashes, another bot will pick up the load and just continue on. So it gives you each runtime of every single process, so you can then go in and have a look, see how we're doing. So we run pick lists every morning. Just go to today for a second and find something that runs regularly. Import new orders from our website runs every 180 days. So if I just do a quick find on here and do 121, I've got 10,143 log files, but I only hold a month. That's one task. Every month we run 10,000 tasks. So every month we're running on average 65,000 tasks with this module, and it just manages the solution. And yeah, from a principle of how to set these up, it's relatively simple. If I just go into here. So what we do is we put an ID in for every single script. So there's the control modules. I'm not going to share all this. I'm not going to go into too much of this because I just explained the principle. We have a primary control for automation, which is in here. So this is where you guys could do things smarter than what we've done. We've stuck with the legacy stuff we wrote. So in here is one script that has got every ID in it. It's just a little if, right? And it just says, if the script ID is this, run this script. It's the most basic thing ever. It's simple. And then all we do is we write each script with an ID number that's on the front, and it will just come along and run the script. So the control script will acquire the line, as I said, lock the record, grab the ID number, fire this script and says, find me the matching ID, run the subscript. So if I go to, I just want to find something that's going to be running that's okay. Sign stop list, here we go, that's fine. It's the most simple script. So this file, admittedly, yes, is linked to pretty much every solution. So that's the thing, it has to know the database. So this one file is linked to every single file that's in there that we have in our solutions, but you can run any command. If the result comes back as a false, so basically if it comes back with anything but a result of 0, that's where the log then logs the error and then it alerts us. We type the error log into Slack as well, so then it notifies the script is then errored. One of the things we found out with the bots that was a problem, which I don't think you have a problem on server, so this is a failing with the bot system, is the cache. So if I go over here and if I go to today and core nightlies, what I did is I created a little Apple script that goes and gets the size of the cache folder off the bots when they run. So I know when this nightly process ran, it generated at the start, it was 368 meg the cache on that bot. When it finished that task, it was 14 gig. So it filled the machine up. So we've got a system in there that says if it goes over a certain size, it's about 1.5 gig, it will then force the FileMaker to quit, clear the cache, reboot, and keep the systems all running fast. And that is primarily what I wanted to show you as what we do with our solutions and where we are. we're developing this on a regular basis. We're using it as a way to patch as well, so we can then monitor the results. So you can see this ran as FileMaker 18. We've got an 18, we've got 19s. We're testing all different servers. When we got M1s in, we stick one bot in on an M1, which is, if I go today, I think bot 2 is an M1. I think, oh no, 1 is an M1, so it's running 19.4.2. So we then got the stats. We can look at that stats and see whether there's any issues between the machines. Did they run quicker or not? So it's about having visibility and about being able to do things quick and easy. That's what I wanted to show you guys. I'm happy to leave the screens up, take questions, and please ask away if there's anything that you want to ask, how we do it and what we do. So.
Gary, I got a little machine question here, actually. I can see that you're running Macs. Are they running on local M1s or AWS M1s, or have you seen a difference between an old M1 Mac or a new M1?
We are running all Mac Minis, just to let you know.
Yeah, but they can be on
M1s
M1s as well.
Yeah, with the 19, that one there, the FMBug 1 is a new M1. And is it quicker? Yes. It's a hell of a lot quicker.
Yeah, and they are all local?
All local, all on our LAN.
Yeah. You haven't considering using like AWS ones, for example?
We haven't, because we've got our own data center, so all our stuff's hosted by ourselves. So that means we're going to push everything over the web. You might as well keep it on the LAN, it's quicker.
Yeah.
So, so from that point of view, we haven't considered it. I think with what maybe Claris is doing with basically Studio, in the fullness of time, I'm not saying on-prem's going, but in the fullness of time, there may be benefits for security and other benefits of passing that over to Claris and let them deal with that. That may be an option. We're going to have to work out how to make this work if that ever happens in the future. But yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't run this in AWS. Absolutely.
And you're running all versions of Pro as well, I can see there. Is there a difference?
Yeah, it's got different versions. The only reason for that is we were in between upgrading hardware, pandemic hit, and we had enough to do moving 200 odd people out. So we focused on that, and we're in the upgrade at the moment. I can tell you the M1s are sitting on the shelf. We've got 3 more M1s to go in. We're literally at the stage of doing the test with the M1s to make sure they're all solid. There's a little thing with the M1 that caused us a bit of an issue, which was to do with DSN records on an M1, trying to get them working to connect to, say, our SQL servers and stuff like that. So until we got that sorted, which we have done now, we've managed to sort and resolve those. That's the reason why we didn't migrate. So. One of the other things I wanted to show you, which I realized I skipped over, if we want to know what's running, I'm just doing this out. We can then just get a count of the scripts that are running at a given time interval. So that's something helping with the load. There's no point, okay, yes, you can see 8 o'clock, there's 25 active tasks, but that's the morning task, cleaning up and sending emails to the staff, so and stuff like that. So they're short tasks. It gives you an idea of which hours are free. So at the moment, 10:35 in the morning, there's nothing running. So you can allocate something to run at 10:35 and then it's not going to conflict with anything. So. Not that it conflicts, but 4 bots will pick the tasks up. It's about loads on servers and looking at what's running. So. I don't think there's anything else. We have a control module as well in here, so it tells you whether it's running. So if I wanted to, instead of pausing all of them, I can just go in and just say, well, 6, let's just pause 6 now. So I'll pause that. That screen bottom right should change in a second. So if you want to take a bot out for maintenance, you can then press that, make sure it goes into pause mode, and make sure there's no scripts actively running. You can go kill the machine, take it out of service, do what you like with it. So I'm hoping that works. It should work. There you go, fine. Just gone red. So. And it tells you it's paused, and yeah, that's it. So I'm happy to answer questions on that in the bar or whatever you want. So
Nice one, Gary. I just wanted to ask something related to infrastructure. So from what I understand, those bots are just FileMaker running on a Mac, and the server is not on the same machine, right?
No, God, no, not at all.
Okay, great. And
so yeah, it's just machines on the LAN. So it's the same as a client machine basically, but dedicated, only doing that stuff. So.
Okay, that was what I assumed. And just one suggestion, if you don't already know, you may run any script from any file using perform script by name, just by using file name, 2 semicolons, and the script name. So you could extend it to be as dynamic as you would want.
Yeah, as I say, we'd love to rewrite this. We're too scared to rewrite it. So, it runs everything. So you're right. There's so much more we can do with it now. FileMaker's given us the tools to do a hell of a lot more with it. There's API calls we can run on stuff as well. But yeah, absolutely. There's so much more scope to get this code rewritten to make it easier. But it's pretty simple to use. We've got a little thing as well, which is a list of IDs we can put behind a script. So if we bring in, say, web orders in, we know that we can't be running payments or a process on that file when it's coming in. So we can put an exclusion on. So you can say, if this other task is running on any of the other bots, don't run this, just wait another 60 seconds until that task is finished. So it checks the status of all the tasks. So there's a module in there that says, based on the ID, if there's dependencies on other IDs, just check that they're not running. So as I say, it takes the complexities out of trying to do this and remember this yourself. You can just literally have a machine that does it. So. Cool. I'll stop sharing the screen and make sure all the bots keep going on, because I'll have someone phoning me up soon saying things stopped. So.
That was great, Gary. That was really interesting. Fantastic. Technically, I think we're about on schedule for the FMBug Help. And by the way, I forgot to thank Doug for his excellent presentation and time which he's put in for this. So thank you, Doug. We have a session, we have the FMBug Help Session. Actually, I think I renamed this the other day. I haven't renamed it in here. Help and show off session. So if anyone wants to share anything, something they've done recently that they think is particularly good, useful, or whatever, this session is for that. It's also for people who have an issue they're stuck on and want to get past, want some help with that, because there's a wealth of really excellent developers here. In fact, I think it's nothing but excellent developers here tonight. Haven't had much traction on this. If it's something you want us to keep in, let me know, or let Gary know. If you think it's just a complete waste of time, also let us know, and we won't include it in future sessions. So if there's anyone who wants to say anything, stick your hand up and jump in now. Otherwise, I think we just carry on and move on to talking more with Doug generally about where Claris is going.
I just want to say that the idea of the Q&A stuff, I thought was a good idea, good concept. I think there's a lot of people here that know what they're doing. I think the idea that Jul and I were trying to do is any newcomers to FileMaker that were coming to this, then they could ask questions to the wise group that we have that attend. But you're all too wise. So that's the problem. So
yeah,
I don't know if
definitely
it's going to work. So,
well, that's why I broadened it slightly to people wanting to show something and share something. So.
Okay, great. I have a blocker, and it's good that Christian is here, because it's basically I cannot get NBS server to run on macOS the terminal command. So I assume that this is a macOS Monterey thing. So if you have any ideas, it's running on Windows server. Of course it runs when the when the plugin, when the terminal command, the shell command is executed locally, but I cannot get it work on a macOS server. If you have any ideas?
Anything. You could look on your computer and see if it's maybe file permissions or
okay,
executable flag or whatever.
Okay, let's share my screen.
I will not now, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, but basically everything works great. Actually, it's an FFmpeg implementation, and it's very nice. It basically opens up the terminal to FileMaker server, which I highly recommend doing, because then you have freedom to do whatever. But it seems like macOS sandboxing is somehow getting in there, and I tried to do, to get that prompt. So macOS adds FileMaker server sessions or MBS plugin in the privacy area, but that wasn't possible, basically.
Hey, Stathis, could it be what you just mentioned, the privacy? I recently had a bit of an issue with FileMaker server on the Mac, and the problems all went away once I gave the Mac server full permissions to access everything on the disk, which seems to be a recent addition in security. Could it be related to that?
Okay, I'll try that. Thank you, Ian. That's it. I don't have any other questions.
Any other questions? No. What do you want to do?
It's good to have something put in. Sorry, Gary.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just going to say thanks for asking the question. So much appreciated. And a few people have mentioned, well, some mentioned in the chat, it's worth having, and I think it's worth keeping it. And if anyone has a question, as it was said, as Robert said, we don't have to ask a question every session, but I think it's there. I think we just keep reminding people, if you want to ask questions, there's a form on the site, fill the form in, and we'll put it out to the group. So, or just shoot and ask a question. I don't mind. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually, I'll just, Gary, if I can just add one thing to that. The specific problem I had was that, well, I was trying to change the backup location of my FileMaker server on a Mac, and it kept saying that I had an invalid file path, even though the permissions were correct, the folders existed, but it was related to the Mac sandboxing permission to write or access the disk in separate from the file permissions, and sorting that out kind of, or giving it permission to talk to the disk in full seemed to sort it. Phrase very badly, but that's kind of...
That's cool.
Anymore,
what do we want to do? Should we stop the
out.
recording and just go to the virtual bar, or just keep the recording going and ask questions to Doug? Because I think questions are going to go to Doug, so I'm just waking Doug up. He looks like he's frozen.
Yeah. Let's just see if there's anyone who's got a question they don't mind being recorded. Ask now, or a comment or whatever. Otherwise, yeah, Gary, I think just go straight to the virtual bar.
Yep. Anyone got any questions they want to ask, or we'll kill the recording and then fire away? Kill the recording and fire away it is. If it goes silent, that's what's going to happen. So, fine, wonderful guys, much appreciated, and I'm going to stick around for a little bit.